أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن 7 سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Last night we began our discussion on the topic of the significance of the human being amongst the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being, He placed this human being in this world. The challenge, quote unquote, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to get this human being to do the right things and to stay away from the wrong things. The challenge for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to push the human being to do those things that he's supposed to do without actually tying his hands, without actually taking away his free will. And we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala utilizes a number of different methods, a number of different ways to push this human being in the right direction. 3 in particular we went through, the first of which we are all familiar with. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the concept of heaven. And He speaks about the concept of heaven in a lot of detail. When you look at the verses of the Quran, it is not a topic that He just glosses over, just alludes to. No, in fact, He goes into quite a bit of detail. And so He pushes the human being, encourages the human being that if you are to take the right steps, if you are to grow, if you are to reach your perfection, heaven can be your place. Heaven can be a place of residence for you. And what better place than heaven? لَهُمْ مَا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. You get to choose what you want in there. And whatever comes to your mind is granted to you, and so on and so forth. The Quran goes on and on about this. The second method that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses and employs is the idea of hellfire. It's again another topic that you cannot miss when you read the verses of the Quran. Again, a topic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just gloss over. He doesn't just point it out and move on. The reality is He actually goes into quite a bit of detail here as well. So you'll find that the Quran is one of the rare books on all of earth today that will tell you, for example, the conversations that people who are in hellfire are having with one another. What are those conversations? There's no other book that can tell you this, by the way, yes? No other book can tell you these people who end up in hellfire. What is it that made them end up there? What do they say on that day? How do they react on that day? What exactly are they going through? What are the emotions they have in those moments? The Quran talks about a whole lot of these. The Quran says when their book is given to them, they say, you know what, I wish I was never born. I wish I had never had to deal with this. So the Quran talks about hellfire as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala utilizes this method to push us hopefully in the right direction. Then comes a third method, and this was the gateway to our discussion. This third method, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets aside the reward of heaven. He sets aside the punishment of hellfire. And what he talks about now is you shouldn't be doing this simply because when you do it, you are living more of an animalistic lifestyle than you're living life as a human being. This was his third method. And in this third method, although the reward and punishment are there, he's not really talking about those. Those are separate things. But he says, listen, when you do this, this is how animals live their life. And you and I and every person on the face of earth will find that disrespectful. Because you and I know, instinctively, internally, we all know we're better than animals. Don't compare me to an animal. What do you mean I'm living an animalistic lifestyle? And that is exactly the point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to feel that. And so Islam will continue to contrast your life as a human being with the life of the animal or the plant or the other 8 million species that are estimated to exist on earth today. He'll constantly go back to that and contrast these two with one another. And he'll tell you, don't just eat everything they put in front of you. This is how animals live their life. You're better. You're special. You're extraordinary. You're significant. You're a human being. So you shouldn't be doing this. Don't be the type of person who just goes through life with the flow. He never uses his intellect. He never thinks. His life doesn't have meaning. It doesn't have purpose. He says, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. Those people are like the cattle. They're living animalistic lifestyles. That's not who you are. That's not for you. You're a human being. You're much better than that. And he says, don't live this lifestyle where the only thing you care about and the only thing you look for is your physical desires. That's animalistic lifestyle. That's not who you are. And so this contrast happens continuously, so much so that you will find that Quran and Hadith will talk about this idea that there are people living life on earth today that though they appear as human beings, in reality it is an animal that has the appearance of a human being. This is exactly what we discussed with the story of Imam al-Baqir and his companion Abu Basir, in which he saw through the vision of the fifth Imam that many of those who had come to take part in this act of worship, they were not presenting themselves as human beings. They were presenting with the appearance of animals, na'udhu billah, God forbid. Yes? And the Quran goes even a step further and even step forward and tells us, you know what, there are those who live such an animalistic lifestyle even in this world, before they are resurrected in the next world as animals. In this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns them into an animal. And this is a concept that if we found in one hadith here or another hadith there, we might have been hesitant about it. But the Quran talks about this. Quran literally says that there were people, we told them, قُلْنَا لَهُمْ كُونُوا قِرَدَةً خَاسِئِينَ. You're going to become monkeys. And there were other ones that we told them they were going to become khanazir. The Quran talks about this. So the Quran is constantly telling us that you and I as human beings have a higher level. Don't come down to this animalistic level of life. This is where we ended our discussion yesterday. And tonight, inshallah, we'll continue with this discussion. And in order to do so, we'll pose the following questions. Number one, out of the 8 million species that are estimated to exist on earth today, what was it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said when He created the human being that He didn't say when He created any of these 8 million other species on earth? Number two, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create the first human being, what was the famous objection of the angels? And how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala end up in the long run responding to their worry and to their concern? Number three, what makes the human being so significant amongst the millions and millions of other species that live on earth, that are just as complex as this human being? Number four, which verse or verses of the Quran are there that speak of the whole universe being created for you and I? And number five, and finally, why is it that the Quran calls the Prophet greedy and haris? And why did it bring so much pain and sadness to the heart of the Prophet when someone turned away from his message? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 5 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let's begin from here. Why is it that this human being is so special? If you look on earth today, scientists will tell you, these are estimates, these are not, very precise numbers. They'll tell you on earth today, there are 8, almost 9 million species. Interestingly enough, out of these 9 million species, only about 1.5 million of them have we been able to identify. This is not the main point of our talk, but it's just a point on the side. It's quite mesmerizing that with all of this progress that we've had as human beings, out of these 9 million species, if you can even imagine that number in your mind, it's difficult even for us to digest these numbers. Out of these 9 million species, only 1 million, 1.5 million we've been able to identify. Only 1 million have names. We know what they are like. We know how they are. So these are just estimates that are out there. Okay. Out of these 8.7 million, 9 million, let's just say to be, approximate number. Out of these 9 million species that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, when you look at the verses of the Quran, He doesn't speak of the creation of almost any of them. Don't get me wrong, He talks about the animals, He talks about the plants, He talks about the specifics of some of these animals, but rarely, if at all, does He ever talk about the creation of that animal. Doesn't sit there and say, well, this is how we created the cow. This is how we created this animal, this insect. He talks about these insects. He talks about the honeybee. Yes? But He isn't talking about how the honeybee was created. He talks about other animals. The ant comes up in the Quran, but He doesn't talk about how the ant was created. He doesn't walk you through the step-by-step process of how the species was actually created. But He does that for the human being. For the human being, He's going to walk you through this process step by step. And as He comes closer to the end of this process, then He says something, He declares something that He never declared for any other species. Out of all these species He created, He only said this for the human being. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about our creation? This is Surah Al-Mu'minun, the first page of Surah Al-Mu'minun, near the end. It's talking about these verses. He says, well, let me tell you how I created this human being. We started min sulalatin min teen, from an extract of clay. That's the first step. Then we took that, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. We took this drop of fluid, we placed it in a stable place. This is the womb, of course. Then came the next step, ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً. This drop of fluid turned into a clinging mass. It started to come together a little bit. This clinging mass of alaqa then turned into mudghah. This is now flesh. This mudghah, we hardened it. It turned into bone. Yes, it turned into idham. And then what did we do? فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. Then we took this bone and we put more flesh on it. We had flesh grow on it. Those are the steps he's talking about. Okay, so far is going well. He's talking about these different steps. These are spectacular things. We just read these. We don't really understand the details of it. But then he says something else. Up to this point is all physical changes, yes? He was this much, and then he gets a little bit stronger, gets a little bit harder, then flesh, then all of this. Then something happens. It's almost as if God kind of skips over it. It's almost as if He doesn't even want to go into detail here. He says, ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. Then we created him with some other form of creation. Wait a second, I thought we were going through this step by step. I thought you were supposed to tell us how the human being is created, yes? I thought you were supposed to tell us all the ingredients and everything. He says, no, this step is different. This step, all I can tell you, خَلْقًا آخَرَ. ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. Then we created him a different creation. It's a final step. It's that little magic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's sprinkling into the process. You know chefs, yes? When they have them on TV shows in different places. Say, oh chef, well how do you make this food, for example, right? Say, well, you have to add salt and pepper and this and that and the secret ingredient. You're like, but we all came here for the secret ingredient. He says, well, I can't share the secret ingredient with you. You can take all these steps, yes? Have your water boiling and all the simple stuff they'll explain to you, right? The secret ingredient, they won't tell you what the secret ingredient is. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not telling you and I what the secret ingredient is in this verse, partially because we don't even understand it if He were to tell us. But He says, listen, ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. But when this final piece of the puzzle came, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the verses of the Quran, He declared, He said, with this, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. I'm the best of creators. He put all of this together. When the final piece of the puzzle came, He said, look at this, I have a masterpiece. Now this begs the question, oh Allah, 8.7 million other species. These are not the individual animals. These are the species under which will come many other animals, yes? 8.7 million other ones. You never said this about any of the other ones. What's so special about this one? What made it such that you looked at this and you said, oh, this is a masterpiece, this is different. I'm ahsanul khaliqeen now. I'm the best of the best now because of this one. What happened here? You and I might look at it and we say, well, it's because the human being is very complex. His creation went through all these different stages and so on and so forth. No, that's not what makes this human being special. There's something else going on. Why? Because every one of these 8.7 million species is also complex and detailed and sophisticated. It's more sophisticated than you and I can even understand and comprehend. I'll give you one example, just so we understand this complexity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in His creation. But when it came to the human being, it wasn't just this complexity. It was a masterpiece in its complexity, and then another masterpiece on top of that. Something else happened here. All of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is complex. All of this creation is mind-boggling. We don't understand what's happening in the world around us. They'll give you an example of an animal that when you and I see, you'll probably freak out unless you're very brave. If you walk into your house one day and there's a bat in there, yes? A bat's coming and going. I don't know about you. I'm not that brave. Yes? God forbid it's stuck in a place that it can't get out. It's the end of the world for us, yes? This bat that we look at and we say, what a bat. We don't even know why God created him. Like we might look at it sometimes and think, Ya Allah, I mean, why? Out of all this creation, why did you even create this? Yeah, it's one of those creations that we don't look at, sit down and admire, right? It's not like a peacock that comes and opens its thing and you're like, wow, this is so beautiful. It's not a flower. It's not like the sunset. It's none of those. It's a bat. But this bat, its creation is so complex that it's difficult for us to even understand how it does things, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created it. Yes? This information is coming from Richard Dawkins' book. He has a book called The Blind Watchmaker. Yes? And in there he's explaining how a lot of the technologies that we use today are technologies that have been found in nature for many, many years. But of course we're late to the game. So we have to come and learn from nature a lot of times, and then we have to produce our own technology. So he starts to talk about how a bat moves around, how a bat navigates the world around it. How does it do it? It does it the same way we use radars, or we used to use radars, right? Sound waves. You send out a sound wave, it hits things, it comes back to you, it reflects off of things, comes back to you. You figure out where things are. Sounds pretty simple, yes? This bat sends out some sound waves. These sound waves go, it comes back. Okay, so very easy. What's the problem? The problem is this bat has to hunt. This bat has to move and it has to be watching all the smallest movements of small creatures. So he has to send these sound waves so quickly. I have to come back to him so quickly that if this little insect moves from where it was by 2 centimeters, he can see it so that he can hunt it. Otherwise, what is he going to do? He's going to die. So now this bat has to send out sound waves and receive these sound waves, but at a very high speed. Yes? And as he's sending out these sound waves, because some objects might be further from him, the sound wave has to be very strong. At the same time, when the sound wave is coming back, he has to be able to hear that sound wave that came. But the sound wave can't be too strong that he essentially makes himself deaf. It's too high. The pitch is too high. He won't be able to hear it himself because he's going to go deaf. So what does this bat do? This animal that we look at and we don't even think about. up to 200 times per second. I had to triple check this because I can't even picture what 200 times per second even looks like. It opens and clenches its ear so that when it's sending out the wave, it clenches it. So the sound wave is very strong. It goes out. Then it opens it to receive it constantly. Forget about 200 times. Just go with 50. 50 times per second, this bat does this. Are these things that we can even comprehend? These are things we can't even digest. And this is that animal that's not even the most beautiful of them. This is that animal that we don't even count. And then there are other bats, they're sending sound waves. His sound wave has to be a different type so that he knows this is the same sound wave that I sent before. It's a whole system. All of his creation is complex. All of his creation is spectacular. And still out of 8.7 million, he didn't say Tabarakallah Ahsanul Khaliqeen to any of them. Only said it for one out of this 8.7 million. Ya Allah, why? What's so special about this human being? And from this point of the talk onwards, whenever we say this human being, brothers and sisters, I want you to point at yourself. We talk about these topics in, broad terminology. Human being, no, that's you. That's me. Why? Why did God create you? And then out of 8.7 million, for you, he said, this is a masterpiece. This one's amazing. When all of them are as complex as they are. Let's go back to the beginning of the story. What happened when he wanted to bring this human being into this world? Of course the angels had objection. Of course the angels were like, Ya Allah, what are you doing? Oh Allah, this human being, it can create corruption, it can shed blood, it can bomb places, yes? It can bomb places and then go and shake hands with the people that have helped them to bomb those places. It can do all these things that we find in politics today, in the world today. That's what the angels are talking about, yes? This stuff that we see on the news, this is what the angels were talking about. They knew it would reach this point. The angel said, Ya Allah, why are you doing this? The short answer was, Inni a'lamu wa la ta'lamun. I know some stuff you guys don't know. But then he took the time to actually show them. So what did he do? وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. He taught Adam some stuff. What is this stuff? As it relates to our discussion right now, it's not the most important thing. Whatever he taught them. But he taught Adam a bunch of stuff. And then he told Adam to come. And he said, Adam, أَنْبِئْهُمْ بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. Why don't you tell them the stuff that I have taught you? Angels, can you tell me the stuff that I have taught you? They said, no. We have a knowledge we're born with, that's it. But he said, look at this human being, this Adam I created. This Adam I created, he can grow. He has potential to grow. You are start at level 5, you stay at level 5. That's who you are. That's what the angels are. And the rest of creation. But this one I created, if he starts at level 2, he can pull himself up to level 7. This one, he can gain knowledge, he can grow. He can be one thing 1 minute, he can be a different thing a different minute. This is what made the human being so special. This is what was so special about this human being. It was the potential to change, and none of the other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this. Nobody else has this. It's the human being who can change every moment. The angels, they're amazing, but what do they say? They say, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا لَهُ مَقَامٌ مَعْلُومٌ. Surah Safat. They say, listen, we're amazing. We're very close to Allah, yes? But we have one level, that's where we are. We stay in our lane and that's it. You're a human being, you get to become whatever you decide you want to become. You want to be a -5, you can be a -5. Next moment, next second, you can be a +10. It's all in your hands. You can just mold who you are every second. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this one, He said, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. This one is special. And of course, there's potential. There's a little bit of risk involved as well, because he might go on the other side. He might go the other way instead of growing. He might want to go the other way. And this is why the Quran says, this ability to change, this ability to grow, this ability to have the potential to become whatever you want to become. He said, we presented this to all of the other creation and nobody took us up on it. This ability is what the Quran calls the amanah, the trust. That thing that we entrusted the human being with, we gave it to him. The Quran says we presented this amana to every other creation. No one was willing to take it. Everyone was like, no, we don't want that. He says, this is Surah Al-Ahzab verse 72. He says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We presented this ability to everything in the heavens and earth. وَالْجِبَالِ, and the mountains. Because the mountains are supposed to be that thing that's like solid all the time. We presented it to them. فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا. But they didn't want any part of it. وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ. But you and I took Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala up on that deal. Said, yes, that's who I want to be. I want to have that ability that I can grow. I can become whoever I want to become spiritually. When the human being did this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this one's special. He has a potential nobody else has. Yes, all of them are beautiful, all of them are complex, all of them are all of this, all of that. None of them have this though. This potential that the human being has makes him so special amongst the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to go a little bit further in this discussion. So He created this human being. He said, this is an absolute masterpiece. He's talking about you, by the way. He's saying you're a masterpiece. And then He didn't stop there. He said, you know what? I'm going to prefer this creation of mine over everybody else. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We're going to honor Bani Adam. وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. And we will carry this human being in the land and in the bodies of water. وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. This one is special for us. We're going to give preference to him over all of the other things we've created on earth. If you don't feel special already, then what's going to make you feel special in this world? You're significant. You're extraordinary. This is the last step. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you know what? I'm not going to stop there. This one is so special for me. Let me put it this way. In some ways, you and I are God's favorites. We use the word favorite. It has a negative connotation to it, yes? Because we choose favorites based on personal whim. Someone's hair looks like this, or they have some appearance like, yeah, this guy's my favorite. That's because it's on personal whim. It has no value, yes? But Imam Hussein is God's favorite. Because of a reason. Because of merit. You and I are God's favorites. Not just because of some weird reason. No, because of merit. There's reasoning behind it. He didn't stop there. Then he said what he said in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 29. He said, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. He's the one who created everything on earth for you. Let that sink in. If a human being understands these statements of the Quran, the way he looks at life is completely different now. He's basically saying that 8.7 million you were talking about before, and you were just trying to figure out how you're different from them and all of that. Not only are you different, not only are you the best one, in fact, I created those other 8.7 million for you. You know all those creatures that you don't even know their names? You know all those creatures that you haven't even been able to identify yet? You know all those creatures that you can barely even count? I created all of that for you. That's how special you are. If this was something we read in hadith or here or there, we might have been hesitant about it, yes? But this is word by word what the Quran is saying. I created all of that 8.7 million for you. You're not just a part of the puzzle of creation, brothers and sisters. That's not the role we play. We were the reason why this whole puzzle was put together. You're not just a part of the story of this world. You're the number one character in this whole story. This whole universe, this whole world, all of it was for you. So what does this mean? This means when you go out, you see ants walking on earth. Don't take me up on this claim. This is what the Quran is saying. Yes, I'm literally translating verses of Quran here. The Quran is saying those ants were created for you. The Quran is saying that flower you saw on the side of the road was for you. The Quran was saying the sky above your head is for you. The Quran is saying this earth you're walking on is for you. The Quran is saying if you see a little worm in the corner of some room, somehow, some way it was created for you. All of this was for you. And then he took it a step further. And he wanted to make you feel even more special. He said not only that, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. Then he turned towards the skies. Ya Allah, I thought you were done. I thought 8.7 million species, you're done. He said, no. Then he turned towards the skies. فَسَوَّاهُنَّ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ. He made these skies into 7 heavens for you. And these are only the creatures that we see. How many creatures are there that we don't even see in the heavens and earth? How many of them are there that are immaterial, that are created for the sake of the human being? How many angels are there? Their job is just to write down your deeds, is some of them to send down your rizq, some of them to protect you, some of them to whisper good things in your ears, some of them to a whole multitude of different tasks. These angels created for who? Created for you. That's how special you are. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, all of this that I created, by the way, this nature, I didn't just leave it wild out there. What I did is I did taskhir of all of this nature for you, so you could use it. So you know what I did? I didn't just create the moon and the sun. I created the moon and the sun, and then I did taskhir of it. I brought it at your disposal. I made it such that you could actually use it for your day-to-day life. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الْأَنْهَارِ. And these bodies of water, I did taskhir of them, so that they don't just come and wash you and end of story. No, they're there and you can manage and you can live with them and you can use it and all of this kind of stuff. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرِ. And the sun and the moon. And I also made the day and night, I put it at your disposal. I tamed it for you. I did all of this for you. And then you look at the human being. You look at you and I. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His way of initiating this relationship with us, yes? Now you know where you stand in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from His side. Now you come look at it from our side. We're stuck in the basics of our materialistic life. This is the society that we live in. And every now and then you'll find some North Star, some guiding star like Hussein, who will show up and hopefully will grab our hands and pull us out of this animalistic lifestyle that society promotes. This is what the Ahl Bayt came from. The Ahl Bayt came to take your and I's hands and say, listen, this is not where you're supposed to be living life. That level where you just indulge in pleasures, your life has no meaning. No, you're supposed to come higher. You're supposed to elevate yourself. This is how special you are in the eyes of Allah. And this is why when someone rejected the message of the Prophet, it was so painful for the prophets. This is why the Quran says, Harisun alaykum. He can't take it. He can't take it when you reject his message. Why? Because he wants to be right all the time? No, that's you and I. We always want to be right. When we get upset, even when we tell people about religion and faith, yes, I'll say this in religious gatherings, right? Sometimes even when we want to tell other people about religion and faith and they reject for whatever reason, deep down the reason why we're upset is not because this person is not going to grow, it's because I want it to be right. And now you're giving me the feeling I'm not right, and now we're going to have to argue for another 2 hours. That's usually what happens. The Quran says the Prophet was haris. The Prophet was not willing to let go. Why? Because he's trying to tell you and I, you have this potential. This is why you were created. The whole universe was created for you. And here you are, your arrogance doesn't allow you to accept the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent to you and I. This is why the Quran says, Taha, ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa. Ya Rasulullah, take it easy. We didn't do this so that you would give up your life just to try to get these guys on the right path. فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ. You're almost killing yourself. عَلَى آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. You feel like this is such an unfortunate situation. Can you blame the Prophet though? If Allah created the whole earth for you and the 7 heavens for you, and then you lived life and I lived life and I never even realized my potential, would you blame the Prophet if he died out of how unfortunate this situation is? You can't blame the prophets. He understands the reality of the matter. You and I just have to catch up with our beloved Prophet. With that, inshallah, we will bring tonight's talk to an end. Let us take a moment to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all of our marhumin and marhumat, especially the marhumin and marhumat of those who are present tonight, those who are watching online, with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.